I appreciate it. One of Ronald Reagan's most memorable speeches was called "A Time for Choosing." And I cannot remember a year in which that choice was as stark as it is right now. The alternative realities of what we may be facing a year from now, 2 years from now, could not be more dramatic. And in terms of the future of the country, the future of conservatism, the future of the Republican Party, you cannot, quite literally, have a conversation about that without talking about our first speaker tonight, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Paul Ryan. And I hope that people understand, and I said this when I introduced him down at Racine a couple of weeks ago, do you actually appreciate the significance of a Wisconsin native being the Speaker of the House of Representatives? Do you all appreciate that? Actually, you don't. Because it is a truly, truly remarkable moment. And let me try to explain this. You know, political movements often have intellectual leaders that are not the same as political leaders. It is exceedingly rare to have the intellectual leader of a ideological movement become the intellectual leader of a political party. It is even more unusual for the intellectual leader of a political party to move to a position of political power in that political party. And that's what Paul Ryan has done. And in the course of doing that, I think he's shown the nation exactly what we have done here in Wisconsin. And I'm hoping that we will be a firewall of sanity in 2016, but this distinctive element of Wisconsin conservatism, which involves not just fundamental decency, but also an understanding that we should run for office and do events like this, not because we want to be something, but because we want to do something. When you think about what makes Wisconsin conservatives and Republicans different than what's happening around the rest of the country. Number one, it's obviously because we've all been pulling in the same direction, but also it's because we have had leaders, whether it is Ron Johnson or Scott Walker or Paul Ryan, who have decided, you know what, in the time allotted to us, in positions of public trust, let's make a difference. Let's not simply rail against what's happening in the world. Let's see if we can change the trajectory of the country and we can change the policies of this country. This is an extraordinary tradition that I think we had in Wisconsin. And of course, Paul Ryan brings something additional to this. He is also, and this I think is really extraordinary, if those of you, if you've been paying attention to the political process this year, any of you? Been watching any of the news and seeing how I just was wondering, I don't know what you're following this. But to have a political figure who not only embodies this vision, this conservative aspirational vision, but also who embodies a political tradition of decency, who understands the interplay of faith and families with the issues that we deal with, the importance of addressing the culture, makes our next speaker one of the most consequential political figures in America today. It is my honor to introduce to you the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Thank you. I'm about 3 coughs away from losing my voice. So first, just a public awareness announcement. If you shook my hand earlier, please wash it later. I've got this whopping head cold, and I'm about to lose my voice, so I'm going to go a little quieter than normal, and I'm going to be as stark and clear and brief as I possibly can. You know, I was just sitting here listening to Charlie, and we're talking over. By the way, to the servers here and the chef, isn't it awesome to get this great fish fry here at Serb Hall? I'm born and raised on fish fry, and this is one of the best in Wisconsin. I was struck by what Charlie was saying and what the House Republican Conference has been going through this year. It's a lot like what the Republican Party and the conservative movement has been going through for a couple of years. And so let me walk you through, why I'm actually in this job that I'm in. Never intending on doing that. What happened, where we are, and where we're trying to go, to give you a sense of what our hope is that we, as a Republican Party and a conservative movement, go. Just back in October, John Boehner, he was trying to get the Pope to come, any Pope to come to Congress for years. Yeah. For years, he had been trying to get a Pope. He's a devout Catholic. He was trying to get a Pope to come to do a joint session. He finally got the Pope to come, and he had all the Catholics, like myself, on the aisle to make sure that no other member of Congress groped the guy. So I was like the Pope's bouncer for a day. It was kind of fun. But he gets the Pope to come. It was very emotional for him. And he was facing what is effectively a no-confidence vote, where a group of Republicans were basically going to oust him. And that was kind of in the back of his mind at the time. And so the Pope comes, the next morning we have our caucus, we sit in a room, all 247 of us, talk about whatever's coming up for the day. Dave Drake, you guys do that in caucus. We're just going to normal caucus, think nothing of it. He says he's leaving, resigning in like 2 weeks. So, that was for Dave Drake leaving? I immediately go to the press and say, I'm not going to be the speaker. I was in the job I wanted to be in, to do tax reform and entitlement reform and welfare reform. And the guy who was sort of next in line couldn't get the votes. And what happened was, it became clear that the only person that could get the votes from just Republicans to be speaker was myself. The alternative was John Boehner stays, and Nancy Pelosi supplies the balance of the votes to keep him in power. So, yeah, exactly. So that was sort of the gut check moment we and I were facing. And that was obviously not a pleasant scene to behold. So you can't just let that happen. So I asked our conference for 3 conditions on which I would take the speakership. Number 1 was we unify now. We have different caucuses with different sort of flavors of conservatism. We unify because we all have to acknowledge, and I'm speaking to all of us in this room, whether you're in a think tank or a talk radio or a grassroots or an elected official or whatever, we all have to acknowledge that if we stand in a circular firing squad and shoot each other for 2016, the left will win by default, no 2 ways about it. So we got to unify. Number 2, it was personal. I'm fairly young for this job compared to people in history. And our kids are 11, 12, and 14. I sleep on a cot in my office. I don't have an apartment in Washington. I live in Janesville. So they can have my career, but they can't have my family. So my weekends are here in Wisconsin. No 2 ways about it. And so, the third condition, and I think this is why members wanted me to do this job in the first place, because I didn't want the job or the so-called power that comes with it. So I don't think they thought I would abuse it and consolidate it, and they thought I'd let the system work the way the founders intended it, which I always complain about and I'm now doing. But the third condition, and the one I believe our members were excited about, is we have got to go on offense in 2016. We all know the stakes. And the men and women who are serving in Congress now, it is a better and different crop than when I first got there, I've just got to tell you. I came in a majority when I first got elected, and I serve in the majority now. The difference then, I said, was there are a lot of beers and not as many doers. People want to be a congressman, have a title, stay there, don't rock the boat, get reelected. Earmarks, you name it. And those of us who were the bomb throwers back in those days, throwing up bombs, put out budget plans, saying this is where we should go instead of where we are. And now we've got people in Congress who come from all backgrounds. People who come from, think tank backgrounds and farming backgrounds and dentists and realtors and you name it. They're not there to stay. They're doers that will make a difference. So I believe, and now do for sure believe, that we have men and women who are willing to put it all on the line And when I say go on offense, that means, like this man Ronald Reagan did in 1980, we have got to give the country a very clear and very compelling choice. And we have to run on it. And we have to take risks. And we have to be bold. And we have to be specific. And we will get attacked for this, and that is a good thing. Because then when we are attacked on our ideas and our proposals and our agenda, then people know it's real. And when we defend it, they know we're going to fight for it. And then they know if we win, we're going to do it. What do you think they did in Wisconsin? What do you think all these legislators did here when they ran in 2012? Look at all these great laws we now have in the books. So the third condition was that. So where are we? All of our committees and task forces are now working organically, bottom up, everyone participating, talking to constituents, talking to like-minded conservatives about our 5-point agenda. What do you do to get this economy growing? How do you scrap the tax code and get a better tax system? How do you open up our energy markets? How do you get regulatory reform? Oh, by the way, we need to actually say what we will replace Obamacare with. We need to show what our new entitlement reforms will be to prevent a debt crisis. We have better ideas for fighting poverty, for getting people out of the mire of generational poverty and getting on with their lives and restoring upward mobility. We need to get people from welfare to work. The welfare system we have right now incentivizes not working. We need a welfare system that moves people from welfare to working so that they can build better lives for themselves. We don't have a foreign policy right now. To describe what we have right now as some foreign policy doctrine is to discredit foreign policy doctrines. And our military is under duress. So we have to show exactly who we are and what we would do on all of these big issues and run on them. But the fifth one I think came in a clear view just this last week. The fifth one is, do we or do we not have a constitution? Do we or do we not operate under a constitution? Do we or do we not believe in the principles that gave us the Constitution? So the fifth one, and only Congress will and can do this. How do we reclaim our Article 1 powers? How do we reclaim the separation of powers? How do we make sure that when laws are written, they're written by the legislative branch of government and not this new fourth branch of government of all these unelected bureaucrats? And the reason this came into view, and by the way, I find myself giving civics lessons all the time. The reason I think conservatives and people are so angry and so anxious is they see what's happening with Obama. They see where the country's going, and they see us in Congress not doing anything about it. You know, they're so upset, they're so angry, they're so mad. Problem with it is the Constitution. You gotta remember, the guy had a full deck when he got elected. Huge majority in the House, super majority in the Senate, ran his program through, and then ever since we got the majority, he just went with the phone and the pen routine. And to undo those laws, to undo those things, guess what? We need to pass new laws to do that. And, you gotta get through the filibuster in the Senate. So the House, we pass everything we want to pass. We passed all the things you want us to pass. And then you go see them die in the Senate, even with the Republicans controlling it. We get one crack a year. They call it reconciliation. And what we use reconciliation for, this one time we've now had it, is to defund Planned Parenthood and repeal Obamacare. And we put it on the president's desk, and the president vetoed it. We're finally getting things on his desk. The reason I digress on this point is, people are frustrated because we haven't stopped it yet. But guess what? We can pass a bill through the House, fight a filibuster in the Senate, and maybe get through that, but we can't get it into law because guess who's president? Barack Obama. So this all comes to the point that we have to have all three. We have to have a Republican president, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate if we're going to fix all of this. And so the reason we're going on offense, the reason we're laying this agenda out in the spring, before we have a nominee, before the convention, is so that we can have this conversation with our fellow countrymen, that we say, here is who we are, this is what we believe, these are our solutions. And if you vote for us, this is what we will do in 2017. We must earn a mandate from the country. And you do not earn a mandate from the country by running on vague platitudes or having better negative ads than the next person. Ronald Reagan and my mentor Jack Kemp and House Republicans merged forces. House Republicans gave him what was then called supply-side economics, pro-growth economics. Ronald Reagan had the peace through strength strategy, win the Cold War, the evil empire. He didn't have the Reaganomics agenda until House Republicans brought it to him. They ran together. They ran on a very specific, coherent agenda. It was the Jimmy Carter era. They won that election, and what did they do? They had a mandate, and they put it in place. They put their mandate in place in 1981, and the rest, as we say, is history. This is exactly what we're trying to do right now. We, as Republicans, understand the stakes. And the reason why this got so serious last week is when the best jurist on the Supreme Court passed away. When Nino Scalia passed away, that flips the entire balance of the idea of what our Constitution is. You see, we're in a 100-plus-year-long struggle and debate in this country. Heck, a lot of it started right here in Wisconsin with the Progressive Party, the Progressive Movement. Are the principles in the Constitution and in the Constitution itself fixed? Are they durable? Are they immovable? Do our rights come from God? Or is this thing breathable, malleable, reinterpretable, relative? And do our rights now come from the government? That's the debate that's going on right here. And that is the debate that is going to be settled in 2016, if we like it or not. And so the question is, are we going to have a government that sees its role going from promoting equality of opportunity so that we can enjoy our God-given rights and make happiness for ourselves so long as we're not infringing on another person's right to do the same? Or are we done? Are we here? And do we now have a government that sees its role as equalizing the results of our lives? That sees these things, such as healthcare, as now government-granted rights, whereby we give government our rights and they tell us where, when, how, and under what circumstances we exercise these new government-granted rights. This is the philosophical divide that's in front of us. The stakes could not be higher because all branches of government are up for grabs. Congress, the presidency, and the Supreme Court. So, of all times, for us to stop carping at each other, of all times, for those of us who are Republicans, who are conservatives, who agree with each and every one of each other 94% of the time, to unify, and to unify in a way that is aspirational, that is inclusive, that is inspiring, so that, like Ronald Reagan, we can go out to the country and win converts. Win states like Colorado and Nevada and Ohio and Wisconsin and New Hampshire and Virginia and Florida, so that we can win the presidency, keep the Senate, keep the House, and get conservatives on the Supreme Court. Because I gotta tell you, it's not just Scalia. There's probably gonna be one or two more after that. So if there was ever a time in our lifetimes, no matter what generation you are in, that time is now. We, as Republicans, win ideas contests. We lose personality contests. And so, what I saw walking into this job on October 29 was a conservative movement in a precarious position. A conservative Congress in a precarious position. We're unifying in the House. We're going on offense. We're assembling and rolling out an agenda to take a mandate to the country so we can have the kind of conversation we need to have. And this is what we all, in each and every one of us, in our living rooms, when we're on radio, when we're at caucuses, need to do. So that we can unify and go out and get converts. And when we do this, because I believe we will make sure that we elect a good Republican president, that we re-elect a good senator like Ron Johnson, yes, and that Ron Johnson votes for a good judge to go on the Supreme Court, and we walk into office in January of 2017 with a ready-made agenda that has been pre-approved and blessed by the country so that we have a mandate to put it in place and save this nation. Thank you very much.